Okay, TBC members, today's episode we've got Bob, who is a relationship engineer, which is a great title for a job, might I add. Bob's primary focus is unravelling relationship challenges for driven men by diving into their inner thoughts and eliminating fears of rejection. First of all, Bob, welcome to the Trouble Boys Club. How are you doing today, my friend?
Doing great, man. Good to be here.
That's awesome. If you could, if you wouldn't mind, just telling our listeners a bit about yourself, about your page, and sort of like what as like a brief summary of what your page is all about and what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Yeah. As a relationship engineer, it's my fancy version of how I term life coach. I wanted to have something unique about it, and I wanted to be able to be specific. There's a lot of life coaches out there, obviously, and because I specialize in relationships, mostly for men, and I've got a 30-year career in the automotive industry here. I live in the Detroit area of Michigan, and I've been working with and around engineers for 30 some odd years. So I figured if I put the two things together, because I've learned a lot about relationships between people in that industry and in the work I've done for that 30 years. And now translating that into coaching, it's very similar. It's been actually very, very advantageous to have the experience that I have when I'm working with people one-on-one to help them find a life that they want to have, full of joy, meaning and connection, when I've basically been doing that in a different kind of way for years and years in the industry that I'm in. So the reason I do this work is basically because growing up, I always felt like the odd man out. I struggled to form deep connections. A lot of the other guys around, it seemed like everybody had their groups of friends, whether they were in sports or they were, did different things, whatever. And I just felt like I never fit in. And a couple of years ago, I made a discovery about basically how I was raised and grew up. Not that there was anything wrong with it. It instilled in me a identity that was basically kept reiterating for itself that I was someone that didn't belong. No matter where I was, whether it was trying to be in sports or trying to hang out with a group of guys, or even sometimes in relationships with women. So, what I decided at that point was that I was going to.
Sorry, I was just going to ask a quick question. Sorry, I think there's a bit of a delay, so I'm so sorry to jump in. I just wanted to ask because I was super interested because what you just basically said then, it reminded me a lot of myself growing up, and I was going to ask why did you feel like that? Like, because I know you said it was during your childhood or something like that, and that's possibly what made you feel like that. But what exactly kind of was it, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no, I don't mind you asking at all. Basically, it was I didn't know any of this when I was younger. I didn't know it until I was into I was somewhere in my 30s when I realized that I was born in May, and end of May. And if you do the math backwards to when my parents' wedding anniversary was, it was in September. And that's only 8-ish months. It wasn't quite 10 months. So realizing that I was conceived before my parents were married, because I came within that period of time, and then learning even after that, even just a couple of years ago, I learned that the impact that situation can have on an infant. Again, it doesn't matter. It's got nothing to do with how I was raised or what my parents did or how they treated me or anything like that. It was simply to do with the meaning that my infant brain made of that situation when I was conceived, and in the months prior to my actually being born. And what I've confirmed from my parents is obviously there was a lot of stress. My dad was 19, my mom was 20. They grew up in a fairly well to do community and those kind of things back in the late 60s. That was a taboo situation still. So obviously they were probably, there's a lot of stress. There was a lot of anxiety around the fact that, oh my God, we're pregnant, we have to get married, da-da-da-da-da. And then furthering that, my dad was in college at the time, and he was actually, his goal at that point was to play in Major League Baseball. And he was very good. He was like an all-state ball player and went to college to play, and was doing very well. And actually, he admitted to me just a few months ago that his dream in life was to play Major League Baseball. So doing all the math, right? And saying, okay, so all of those things, that anxiety they were going through was feeding into me when I was an infant. And what I've learned is there's a I don't know, it's a philosophy, or probably not a philosophy, it's factual, scientific information about birthrights, and that as traumas happen to us as we're at different stages, between about 6 months prior to birth and 3 or 4 years after our birth, that different things can happen to us where we as, our infant brain will make meaning of different things, and will basically set our identity for our lives. Things like I'm a mistake. Things like I'll only be loved if I'm good. I don't matter, or I don't belong. Things like that, where we play these kind of soundtracks, even whether they're conscious or subconscious in our brains. They hold us back in life. They keep us stuck. They keep us, people say you can't get out of your own way, but that's why. It's because we make these meanings of ourselves, and we hold these beliefs that aren't necessarily true, but they impact us nonetheless.
So are they like subconscious limiting beliefs within your neurological development that you're not going to be aware of until you maybe 20, 30, that they've been embedded in you from an infant and from your environment that your parents were in and that they created for you? Not good or bad, but they created an environment, and you've inherited traits solely from the environment without sort of knowing that was happening. Is that right?
Yeah, it's more of a psychological programming. I mean, it's kind of like a default to, like, for example, my trauma event happened prior to my birth. So in that 6 months to birth time frame, if you have a traumatic event happen in that time frame, you would inherit a certain number of beliefs that then would impact you. The other age ranges are, I don't remember the age range. Oh, it's pre-birth to 2 months, 2 months to 6 months, 6 months to 12 months, 1 to 2 years old, and 2 to 3 years old. So in those different time frames, depending on what happens to you, you'll be established in a different set of beliefs.
Wow, that's insane, isn't it?
That's bananas.
So I might be getting this a bit wrong, but so you can essentially experience the trauma before you're even born, which you did in your sense, because, like you said, your mum and dad was like had loads of anxiety about obviously getting pregnant and not being married and all that kind of stuff. That's crazy. Like, I've heard of similar stuff to that, because it's a bit similar to the generational trauma, isn't it? What, Robin? We mentioned Robin on every fucking episode.
Love you, Robin.
Yeah, I know. I saw her. I saw that episode in your thing, and I didn't get a chance to listen to it, but I saw you talked about generational trauma with somebody recently.
It's awesome. We love you, Robin.
It's so good. Like, the stuff we've learned from Robin's amazing, and she specialises in the generational trauma kind of stuff. And like she's mentioned in the past about the how you can experience trauma like from past generations, like grandparents and ancestors that have been in the war and stuff like that, and it can be passed down. And it's just you'd never know that like in a million years if you hadn't obviously researched it or whatever. But yeah, it still blows my mind.
Yeah,
even now.
Yeah, it's all related in some way, shape, or form. But yeah,
it's crazy. So you said I know you mentioned about the engineering for like the 20 years or whatever, and that's how you tied it into the relationship coaching. So have you done the relationship kind of coaching for like 20 years as well, or is it a fairly new?
Oh no, I've only been coaching for 6 or 7 years.
And what kind of made you want to do the coaching, but then focus on the relationship kind of side of it? Is there anything that made you go down that route?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, why I got into coaching was actually because I hired my first coach, and I realized the benefit of it. I'd coached my son and for small periods of time, my daughter through, in their sports events and things like that, throughout their lives. And I always loved the, being able to mentor and teach somebody things that you've learned. And at one point, I kind of got to my personal rock bottom. In 2016, my weight had bulked up to like 240 pounds. I was going through some situations with my son in the wake of my divorce. And I had to make some very hard decisions there. I had to actually break off a relationship to be able to keep my relationship with my son. Going through a lot of job that was very challenging at the time. And just kind of hit my personal rock bottom and realized, man, that life just can't be all there is to life. It's just problem after problem after problem after problem. And I didn't know a lot of this, this trauma stuff at that point in time. And I had no idea why I felt the way I did. All I know is that I knew life should be better than this, and it shouldn't be this difficult. And it would just seem like one thing after another it was dragging me down. And I found an advertisement for high performance men's coaching and engaged in it for about 6 months, and it completely changed my life. I went from being depressed and having no hope to having an idea of really what my purpose was in life, which was to become a coach myself, to mentor and guide other people. And that was the genesis of Men Becoming Better Men at that point too, which is it started off as a group. It was a support group for men. I started that 5 years ago after I'd gotten into coaching, and just the transformation that the men that have been involved since that has been in existence has been absolutely astounding. One of the men a few weeks ago, he's been around for he's been around all 5 years. We just passed our 5-year anniversary. He told me he made he finally got to the point where he was able to comfortably share his trauma with us a few weeks ago, and it was a big trauma. He's not told us about for years. Wow. And it made total sense that who he has been and who he's becoming is a night and day. And it's basically by being able to get this particular trauma out into the open and be able to talk about it and basically start that healing process from decades past. So it's been a blessing, and then I love working in the group setting. I love working with one-on-one. I do it just because I learned that it was so amazing for me, and I want everybody to have that.
That sounds amazing. I was going to say, so kind of got like two kind of questions. One of them's just a very quick one. So is that T-shirt you've got on, that Better Men Becoming, is that the group that you go to then? Sorry, like the support group?
Well, that's the Men Becoming Better Men is the name of the group that we started 5 years ago. I've since taken that a step further. Now it's my coaching business is Men Becoming Better Men Coaching. So. Wow.
That's amazing. That's such a good story, like how you obviously did it yourself, and then within that 5 years, you like do it yourself now and everything like that. That's amazing.
Well, I can't say I did it myself. I've had multiple coaches. I've had multiple people pouring into me in that period of time. It's been a blessing. And like I said, I want to be able to kind of take what I've learned and pour that into other people as well.
That's essentially what we do. Like we mentioned Robin. Then like we speak to so many amazing people, and the amount of stuff me and Ryan have both learned. It's crazy. But I was just wanting to ask, kind of going back to that first step that you made to doing the coaching. I know that you said that you seen like a ad or something for some high performance coaching. So what would it entail? Like, what would it be like? Because I'm imagining it back then, 2016, wouldn't have been Zoom or anything like that. Wouldn't have been in person. Was that one-on-one back then?
No, it was actually phone calls. Old fashioned way. We picked up the phone and we talked to each other.
The handset. Oh yeah.
So you just pick up the phone and then they're like, tell us about why you're feeling like this, and then do they kind of just like motivate you down the phone of like, you can fucking do it, Bob. Like, you
can do it, Bob. I doubt they said that.
Obviously
I bet they were more
professional.
Yeah.
But obviously, like, how was that back then? Because you said that it kind of gripped you instantly, didn't it? And give you that kind of push and motivated you and stuff like that. Because we don't have stuff like that today, do they? Where you can obviously ring and pick up the phone. It would be on like Zoom or in person or like a support group and stuff. So what kind of stuff did they say like on the phone? And if you can remember it, like,
Oh no, it was conversation. I mean, it was no different than us talking. I mean, obviously we can see each other here, but it's no different than if we were to be talking just on the phone without video. So, coaching is all about asking questions. It's about helping people transform their fears into truth, so they can find the power in that and reclaim that power and use it to take action to move themselves forward.
Yeah. That sounds really good. I was going to ask another quick question, just something about you mentioned, sorry.
Another one?
No, and then I'll pass it over. And it's only because I might be wrong in this, and obviously I might be overstepping the line, so you don't have to answer it at all. I only wanted to ask it because it's somewhat related to Ryan and Ryan's past. You mentioned you had another relationship which you had to cut off for the sake of your son. Is that because your son and your new partner or whatever didn't get on, or...?
Well, no, it was more divorce related. So my ex-wife was not happy. I'm trying to be very politically correct.
My ex-wife. I thought it might have been.
No, it's okay. I don't mind sharing my story, because it's important, because people need to know these things. My ex-wife was not happy with the divorce, and she put a lot of pressure on my son. So when he was coming, he was still under 18, so we still had court-ordered time that he was supposed to come and spend time with me. And he decided his senior year of high school that he didn't want to do that anymore. It was because I was living with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and he wasn't comfortable because. At least I assume so. It was my ex-wife was not allowing him to be comfortable with coming over here. So he said, "Hey, as long as this situation's the way, it wasn't that there was anything wrong relationship between them, but it was just the uncomfortableness of her being here. He was here. We were all kind of living together under one house, and it made everybody uncomfortable. So instead of foregoing that whole year." Of being able to spend that basically the last year I was able to spend time with my son, because once he went off to college, he hasn't lived in my home since. So made the decision to break up my relationship with my girlfriend at the time, who again is now my wife. We did end up come circling around after about 6 months. We didn't see each other. We didn't talk. And then we started talking again about 6 months later and kind of started dating. But we kind of kept it at arm's length just until my son
went to college,
graduated from high school. And then he was off and doing his own thing. And we got back together. And that was 2017. So, by the summer of 2017, we had gotten back together and we got married in 2018. So...
That's really nice to hear. It's also dead nice at the same, even though it's shit that you had to do it, it's also amazing that you do anything like that for your son. And that's why I was asking it, because obviously you went through some similar shit, which...
it's very, very relevant. It's very, very nice to hear that you took your son's feelings into account above your own.
Yeah.
And I think any father would do that anyway. but the fact that you followed through with it and sort of sacrificed your own happiness to a degree, because you might not have rekindled with your now wife, you know, you might have burnt that bridge for good, but you did it for your son. That was like the most important thing, man. That's honestly it's made me fucking burn inside with like pride as like a man. That like that's fucking next level, Bob. That's class.
Yeah. Well, I started learning at that point too the importance of father-son relationships, and I couldn't because basically I wouldn't have seen him. I would have, you know, I maybe would have got to see him once a month or something to go out to dinner or whatever. And I didn't want that last year of his high school life to be, you know, have that memory of, you know, my dad wasn't there. And he was into sports. He was a 2-sport athlete. He did very well. He swimming and in baseball, and he was an amazing athlete. He was an amazing student. And actually he's currently in grad school, so he's pursuing a double doctorate in medicine. So
wow, holy shit,
it's pretty crazy. He's an amazing kid, and I'd have done it for him no matter. I mean, it was a no brainer. It wasn't. He's just an amazing kid, and I'm glad that it kept our relationship as close as it could. And I got lucky in the fact that I also got to keep my wife in the process. So I lucked out on all fronts.
I wouldn't call it luck, man. I think that's the universe giving you a bit of a handout because you've done the right thing.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in that sort of stuff. That if you've done the greater good, like the deed that's going to benefit everybody in the long run, you'll get something in return, sort of like around the bend. It won't be like as obvious. But that's meant. I did watch a few of your videos before, Bob, just doing a bit of research. I call it my little detective work.
Cool.
And I think the reason why people will sort of relate to you a lot is because you don't bullshit. You sort of go straight to point. You're very direct, and you're very, and I mean this in a good way. You're very blunt and like direct, and you know, instead of
I like that though.
Me too, because you can see coaches or life coaches or whatever, they'll sort of pussyfoot around what they're
How
actually.
Does that make you feel?
Yeah, like no, and one of your videos, which I just wanted to mention quickly now, you said that without accountability, you're not a man. And it was, so I watched it about 4 times and I was like, shit, he's right. And you could have said that about 14 different ways with about 60 odd words, but the fact that you just did it in about 7, it makes you look internally, and I think it's great that you do that. And have you found that people do come to you because you have that ethos of being straight and narrow?
I think so. I've never really asked anybody specifically if they haven't, but I hope they will. I'm big on accountability. It's something, and it's the reason I'm working with another coach right now is I've kind of gone through these peaks and valleys over the last couple of years where, you know, if I work with a coach, I'm doing great. I'm staying in action. I'm staying accountable. And then the minute I don't, I kind of plateau and I cruise, and I'm like, I'll have good ideas, but I won't follow through on them. I won't take action on them. And I need to have that accountability in my life so that I keep moving forward. And even, there's times when I've been, I've made, the videos you're looking at. You look at them on Instagram or on TikTok where I put them. They don't get a ton of views. I don't have a ton of followers yet at this point because I redid all my social media accounts, but and I changed over to this niche. But the point being is that there's going to be hard times, but I just have to be honest. I have to be consistent. I have to be accountable, and that kind of that advice carries over in every area of life, whether it's for work or your family or your marriage or whatever. It's about being consistent and about being accountable to yourself. And actually, there was a man posted, and I have a private Facebook group too for men becoming better men. And I got an anonymous post in there today. It was very interesting. And he was asking about being emasculated and asking for some advice on that. And I love the fact that he put that in there. And I gave him some feedback, but the last part of feedback I gave him was, it comes back, that kind of whole thing comes back to respect, right? As men, we want to be respected by, our wives, our family, our children, whoever. It's very important for us, right? And how we lose respect is that we don't follow through. We don't hold ourselves accountable. We don't keep our word. So that's obviously one of the four agreements from. If you ever read the book The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, one of the four agreements is be impeccable with your word. It basically means whatever you say you're going to do, you must do it. And when we say we're going to do something, when we don't, that erodes trust, it erodes respect. But as men, if we're able to be impeccable with our word, do what we say we're going to do, always, all the time, no matter what, or at least to be able to say, oh, okay, sorry, I can't do this. Here's why I can't do it, but I will do it by tomorrow or next week or whatever. But to be that upfront and that transparent with it, at least we're able to keep our trust. We're able to keep that respect that we've built and generated. And that's what I told this man in the post was that, you got to look at yourself and see if that's where maybe your wife or your significant other isn't giving you the respect that you deserve because you can't keep a promise to yourself or to her or to anyone else. And that trust has been eroded. And basically, one of the things I've learned in relationships is if we aren't doing that and taking that responsibility for our word and our actions with our wives, they will take over because they're not going to wait around for, when you say you're going to do the dishes and you don't do the dishes, they're not going to wait around. They're going to take care of it. You say you're going to take the dog to the vet. You don't do it. They're going to take care of it. And the more things they got to keep taking care of makes them mad, erodes the trust, erodes the relationship. Next thing you know, you're standing in front of a judge saying, I don't know why she's leaving me, judge. And then he clangs the gavel and you're divorced. So it's a slippery slope that men go down, not realizing that how impactful it is for us to keep our word at all times.
Yeah, that's so true. I was going to say, doing the coaching, do you kind of see a bit of a pattern? Like more common things as to why relationships break down? Do you ever see kind of a pattern? Because one thing I was thinking...
Yeah, that's the huge one is the trust and respect.
Yeah.
For me, it was physicality, right? My ex-wife and I had different opinions and ideas about a sexual relationship, about how often and when and all of that. That's another big one.
That's what I was going to ask, because I was going to say, like, what I'd think of straight away would be like to do in the bedroom and stuff like that, because of like very stereotypical thing to say is that men obviously like sex a lot more than women, at least in my experience, and I feel like it can somewhat knock your confidence a bit when you do want to have sex and you keep getting
knocked back, rejected. Yeah.
And then you get to a bit of a point when you just think like, I'm not even going to bother anymore. And then, like you said, but then that can make you feel shit, because I think like when you start having a relationship, there's always like them fireworks, and it's for the first few months or whatever, like man and woman or whatever, like you can't keep your hands off each other and stuff like that.
I call that blowjob season.
Yeah, and it's like, and then after a while, like you said, like
you like that one.
Anal season. No, joking. I think. Yeah, so I was just going to say, for me, relationship would be a big one, like you said, in terms of the physical thing. I think in my own situation, it's probably a bit like that, but I've come to accept it in the sense of we've got 2 young kids, and I understand like women and men have different sex drives, and men have a lot of testosterone and blah 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 blah. Like, you know, and I'm genuinely just a very horny guy anyway. Like, you know, I just genuinely am, and I've always have been. And I suppose whereas some people probably would struggle to accept that, like. I'm not going to throw you under the bus, but I know...
Throw me under the bus, bro.
I was going to say, I know it was a bit of an issue with Ryan, and Ryan started to have a lot of like confidence issues, and do you know what I mean? Thinking he had a small pecker and stuff. I'm not joking. No, but he had a lot... He had a lot of,
funny because it's true.
He had a lot of like confidence issues from it, and I used to say to him like, that's just... Sometimes that can just be life when shit gets in the way, and... So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think women should be a bit more understandable and put out more, or you know, or do you think like men should just kind of get on with it? Like, because how do you make a woman get a fucking more libido, or can it just be a fact of that's just women, and you know, when you've got kids to look after, the last thing on their mind is sex? Like, you know, it's a bit of a
I mean, it's tricky. It depends on the kid, you know, the kids, their ages, what's going on. I know I didn't do things right in my first marriage. I kind of went into a shell. I was struggling with a lot of things, anger. I was struggling, you know, like I said, my birthright situation of that I didn't belong. I didn't feel like I fit in. And a lot of that trauma and that internal stuff going on in me kind of exacerbated in my marriage. And it kind of came out in the situation. And what I would do is I'd pull away. I'd feel like I didn't belong, whether it was in the family or whatever, and I'd pull away and I'd isolate myself, and I do my own things, and then she would be sitting there wondering why I'm so distant and pulled away. Wherein she, you know, I think she might have had I not pulled away, if I'd have been more open with her and had more communication about, you know, what it was that I was going through because of this, you know, as I learned it as this past experience, might have been a little different. But the one other thing I wanted to say in response to that was not all women are like that. So there are women that like it just as much. And personally, I think everyone should have to wear a billboard or something across their forehead that either I like it a lot, I like it a little, or I don't like it at all. And when we meet people, we should just be able to easily identify who likes it and who doesn't, because I've heard more stories of men that like sex and women that don't, or women that like sex and men that don't, and how these people get together and ruin each other's lives or make each other's lives difficult. I don't understand. So if there was a better way that we could all match up, you know, the people that really like sex, let's put them over here. And the people that don't like sex, we'll put them over here. And people that are kind of in the middle, we can let them mingle. But it seems like there should be a better way to be able to do that. But a lot of it is finding the right person.
Yeah, maybe Elon Musk can put that in the Neuralink thing. It'll just like pop up like a projection going, I like sex.
Yeah, there you go. But it should at least be, you know, in your Tinder profile or something, right? You can check that box. I either like sex or I don't. Although I guess if you don't like sex, you're probably not on Tinder. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Jay was sort of like trying to say before, but he worded it very poorly, is like should in a heterosexual relationship specifically, should if the man is you know asking for it and getting constantly pushed back and it's knocking the shit out of his confidence, should they make some form of conscious understanding of what that must be like for the man and be like, I'm knocking him back constantly here, and eventually he's going to stop pestering me for it, and then I'm going to miss it. Do you know what I mean? So should they try and intuitively understand how it must feel in the man's shoes. Like if we turn them down,
not intuitively, but they need to have a conversation. Yes. I mean, that's the key to all relationships is the communication. Him being able to tell her what he needs and what he wants, and then vice versa, and getting on the same, and not discounting what each other wants too, right? Because I know I told my ex-wife 100 times that I needed to have more sex, and I'm sure she was telling me things that I needed to do differently, but my ego was in the way so much that I wasn't hearing her and wasn't understanding what it was that she needed to be fulfilled to where she could open herself up and trust me. I was like making promises that I was keeping. I was making, like I said about being impeccable with your word, I was doing all kinds of things that were violating her trust and her respect for me, that were basically driving her away from me, that where she didn't want to have sex with me.
Yeah.
As much as I wanted to have it, she didn't want to have it because I wasn't doing the right things that fueled her and filled her up. And, it goes back to love languages too. Being able to speak each other's love language is huge. If I'm consistently, and I was like this too, I'm a physical touch. So I was always trying to touch her, rub her, do back rubs and do all that kind of stuff. Well, she wasn't a physical touch love language person. She was more of a acts of service and things like that. So if I wasn't doing acts of service, like taking out the trash and doing the dishes and doing things like that helped serve her in that way, that I was never going to get in her good graces. And vice versa, because she was not a physical touch person. She was never, filling my needs. So we were constantly going in opposite directions. And that's why it didn't work out. If we had been able to understand better what each other's physical and mental and psychological needs were, then you can tune yourself, you tune your actions to your partner, so where you can fill their needs first and foremost. And it's not the very important part here is it's not a competition. I know what my wife's needs are right now. She's very much words of affirmation. She's very much quality time. So anytime I can tell her, you look beautiful today, or, using the words I love you a lot, reinforcing her and telling her the things that I know she enjoys to hear, that gets me a lot more back from her of what I need than for me to not, if I was giving her gifts or, trying to give her back rubs or things like that or would be more my love language, those are going to fall on, they're going to fall deaf on her. They're not going to resonate and she's going to shut down.
100%. And I think that's where in relationships, like you said, you need to have that communication for each of us love languages, because I feel like, I'm using Ryan again as an example, but one massive thing for him was pretty much exactly what you just said then about you and your new partner and you understanding her love language and saying you're beautiful, I love you and stuff like that. And that is something that you kind of addressed several times in terms of like, I want that affection and I want compliments, or not like that.
It was more reassurance rather than compliments
even if like he got a haircut, do you know what I mean? Like just a little thing.
Tell me I look handsome. How hard's that? Tell me I'm alright.
Little things like that, but and I know obviously several things was mentioned several times, but like you said, it's about how it's received and then by that point, has it already been tarnished, and is there too much resentment there to kind of like, well, I don't really give a shit, like, do you know what I mean, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I feel like that probably was the case, because I've got a past relationship as well, like before the one I was in now, and I was with my ex-partner for like about 7 years, and it very much got to that level with me and her where, because I left her and split up with her because I felt like I no longer loved her, which was really sad towards the end of the relationship, but because I felt like that, and like I mentioned before, like I'm a very horny guy and love sex, but with her towards the end of the relationship, like it weren't there. I didn't want to have sex anymore because I didn't like her as a person anymore. I weren't in love with I loved her as a person, sorry, but I weren't in love with her anymore. So I do totally understand it from the female perspective, like you said. I think it just, we've absolutely gone down a rabbit hole here talking about sex, haven't we?
Well, I don't think it's just sex. I think that the love languages and what men want, what women want, I think it all has like intersections and stuff. So it's not solely just about sex, but it's
it's not. It's so true though, because a lot of like what Bob's saying, it probably does remind me of like where he was like a year ago and stuff like that.
100%, man, and it's quite. I find comfort that like you not went through it, but like say it's doing similar stuff to what I did, and like it still didn't work out. Like you tried, you did your best, and then it just ultimately just flopped. There's too much resentment, too much hostility, too much clinging on to mistakes that you made 10 years ago and all that shit. So I think when that happens, the best option is to part ways, and especially when kids are involved, like have two happy homes rather than one fucking miserable one.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? And that's been the case for myself. Like we've got two happy homes now.
You definitely do.
And my kids are fucking amazing, and they're dead happy. I'm dead happy. They're content with like my life and who I am as a fucking.
And you just get on really well as I now, don't you? You and your wife.
Yeah, absolutely sweet as a nut. So it's just one of them where where it just didn't fucking work out. We tried, it didn't work out. I was young, didn't work out.
Yeah.
But it's nice to hear that. It's nice. It's comforting to sort of see that you took a similar path and you didn't work out either. So it makes me feel less isolated.
Yeah. And the best. I'll tell you one more thing. Is the best thing about my relationship now is, and I find this. I wish I didn't known this years ago when I went my first relationship. But to find a woman that obviously meets all the other physical requirements, but also that she supports me no matter what. That she, supports my dreams, supports my goals. I didn't have that at all either in my first marriage, and it's night and day now to where, my wife supports anything I want to do. I came home early from the office today. Said, "Hey, I'm going to be on a podcast." She's like, "Okay, great, good luck, have fun," and she understood that. Whereas if I'd have done that in my previous relationship, I'd have got, "Why are you doing that again? Why?" And I just would have got nagged and complained at. So again, it depends on the person and it's their maturity too, and where they are in their healing. Because obviously we all have traumas from our youth, right? And it just depends on where everybody's at.
Yeah, what you just said then, Bob, like, me and him was like fucking Churchill to Nodding Dog, because both straight away like this.
It's like Lose Yourself got turned on, wasn't it? Lose Yourself.
No, because that's something we both spoke about a lot at great length, having that support. And not that we need the support, but how fucking refreshing is it, like you said, just to be able to say something and have fun, have a mint time. Whereas, there's been times in the past where you feel like you can't do that, or, do you know what I mean? There's nothing worse than that. Just in regards to, like, loads of other things, like, if you're going through a bit of a bad time, or, like, all you want is for your other half to support you and understand. And I know that's something that me and you both did a lot the opposite way. Like, we'd understand every situation and be like, yeah, it's okay, like, you're having a bad day, this happens.
Oh, you mean when they made a mistake, we comforted. When we made a mistake, we got salt poured in the wound.
Yeah, that was a very common thing for both me and Ryan in a lot of situations. And, like you said, a lot of it is just that communication and having them difficult chats and, how you can build on certain things. But I was going to ask as well, on your Instagram, in your link tree, where you've got all your different like links and stuff like that, you've got something called the Divorce Healing 30-Day Challenge. I know what it is because it is what it says on the tin. But what kind of is it? Is that for like someone who's just gone through a divorce and they're struggling and they're feeling really low, and then do you kind of like uplift them and kind of get them feeling good again?
Yeah, it's actually more of a self-paced program. It's just there's some challenging questions and exercises in there, basically to help you kind of break out of the mindset of I failed, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it is, whatever the story is you're telling yourself. A lot of men go through, when they're going through divorce, they lose touch with their kids. Alienation is a big thing. Just it kind of walks you through just some mindset type of things like that can kind of get you back on your feet, so to speak, to dealing with the divorce.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? That a lot of men tend to lose touch with the kids when they go through divorce. Do you think it's because they're still connected to their ex-partner, or?
In most of the cases I've experienced where alienation is involved, it's because one of the two partners gets so totally scorned by the other one, embarrassed, whatever you want to call it. There's just a lot of vengeance comes out, and a lot of people's true colors get shown. And it's really unfortunate because the ones that pay for that the most are the kids.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it did happen to me. My ex was actively trying to keep me separated from my kids. I went months without seeing them at all. And then, I had to rebuild those relationships because they had a different opinion of me because of what they were hearing. Maybe some of it was true, maybe some of it wasn't true, but it didn't matter. It wasn't, what they knew of me from the previous, 14 to 16 years prior to that. So, but I've also heard cases where, and it's a lot more rare, but I've heard, where fathers have been able to take their kids away from their mothers for doing nothing wrong. And it's just either way, it's a tragedy. When any formerly married or formerly married couple fights over their children and use them as pawns, it's just it honestly, it should be illegal. In every state, in every country around the world, because it destroys. It not only destroys the parent who, quote unquote, loses in the situation, but it really does a number on the kids as well.
It does, definitely. Me and my partner we kind of separated for a few months earlier this year, just because we was going through a few difficult patches, and I think both of our mental healths weren't very great and stuff like that. And when we did actually separate, it was for about 2-3 months, but we with our daughter, we split it 50-50, and we was super fair with each other, nothing was ever no or da-da-da-da, and we was all we wanted was the best for our daughter in that situation, and we didn't have one argument or disagreement. I know it was only 3 months or whatever, so there probably weren't an opportunity for that, but that's one thing we always said: if we did split up, we'd never use the child, because we've seen that before with I'm not going to mention names, but someone I know split up with his ex-partner, and she used the child massively as a weapon and refused to let him see the child, and he had to take her to court, and then he ended up getting custody back, and he now has 50-50 with his ex-partner and stuff like that. And like you said, it's just so shit when they have to do that, because like you said, the only person that's losing is the child, and it's why put them through it? Yeah,
it's tragic. I know far too many people that have had to go through that situation, and just the fact that it's making children, who are going to grow up and they're going to have the same issues, or talk about generational trauma, right? That's exactly what we're heading down with all these cases that are happening with this. Those kids are going to grow up, and they're going to be in bad relationships just like their parents, and they're going to keep, it's just going to keep going.
Need to break the cycle. I listened to, it's a song, but it was a live performance version of it, and I actually sent it to Robin, and it's so powerful. You might not have heard of the guy because he's from England and he's not that famous, but he's called Loyal Kana, and he does a lot of poetry as well. And the lyric that he kind of said was because he went through similar with his dad. His dad kind of walked out, left him, and he was raised by his mom. And then he had a child when he was 25, and he didn't have the best relationship with his own dad, and then he kind of like was like, yeah, like fuck all this generational trauma kind of stuff. I'm gonna break the cycle. And he said, and the only way to break the cycle is to push it back up. And he said that his 1-year-old son was sat there smiling at him, and he said, I'm gonna push that love back up. So he like told his dad that he loved him and spoke to him and blah blah blah. And then his dad hugged his dad, and he was like, I'm pushing it back up rather than back down to my son. I worded it shit, but like the way he said it, it was so beautiful, and like it proper like hit home, because I was thinking like it's so true, and that is the only way to like break the cycle, is to like push it back up. But you know, I wish I could do it in my situation, because I don't speak to my dad, but you know, that's for very different reasons. That's because he's a very, I don't even know how to word him, but
bit of a prick.
No, but he's not just a bit of a prick. Like he's done certain things that are like unforgivable. Do you know what I mean? And like, I also think he'd never be able to change. And I've spoken to Robin about this when I've done a session with her and stuff like that. Like, I'd love nothing more to be the bigger person in that situation and be like, I forgive you for, you know, blah blah blah. But yeah, some people I just don't think can change. But like you said, I think breaking the cycle is the most important thing anyway. But yeah, I'm waffling. Do you have any like questions or anything that you want? Because I feel like I'm just firing questions.
No, it's not a question per se, but like, you know, when you was going through your divorce, Bob, like what was the like catalyst or the springboard that got you sort of back onto the like, I need to do better for my children, for myself? Like, what was there like a catalyst? Was there a moment that sort of springs to mind that got you back fired up to be happy?
No, it's like I said, it was kind of just hitting rock bottom. I mean, I was going through that with the kids. I was dealing with the divorce. You know, the situation with my son and my girlfriend, and it was all kind of just happening all at once. And it just like I said, I didn't know which way to go. I knew I needed help. And as men, we suck at asking for help. We think we can handle everything on our own. And honestly, it was probably just the persistence of hearing this message from this particular coaching company that I hired, seeing their message over and over again and realizing, you know what, I can't do this myself. Maybe this isn't exactly asking for help, but at least it's seeking help and trying to, you know, invest some resources in fixing what, you know, obviously there's people out there being successful and I'm not one of them. So what are they doing that I'm not doing? And, you know, you hear the stories enough and you're like, oh, maybe this coaching thing is, you know, not, it isn't, you know, snake oil or whatever you want to call it. Because a lot of people think it is. A lot of people think it's just, you know, it's people trying to tell you what to do, and it's really not. At least in my case, my goal when I work with somebody is that I'm going to give you all the tools that I have and all the tools that I think you need based on your situation, and then I'm going to cheer you on, and I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to get you, you know, like I said, we talked about accountability. I'm going to hold you accountable to do what you say you're going to do, and if that, you know, that one thing that week is you think is going to move you the most forward, I'm going to hold you accountable for that. And we're going to, you know, if you don't get to it, we're going to figure out why. And we're going to go, if we got to go deep, if we got to go into those birthrights and figure out, you know, get down in the roots and figure out what it was that happened to you when you were, you know, 1, 2, 3 years old, and try to help you understand what's in your way and why it's in your way and help you heal from it. You know, we're going to do that. And if it, you know, it can be very hard or it can be very easy. But either way, I think having somebody like that in your corner is invaluable.
No, it absolutely is. But say for the person who can't afford your skill set, Bob, have you got sort of like 3 free tips on what you would say to someone who is maybe come out of a relationship, they don't quite know their own purpose, and the sort of in a bit of like limbo in life, so to speak. So they can't afford you because you're the best. So what would you say to that person?
Can I just add something onto it?
Yeah.
They also want to get back out there to start dating, but they don't have the confidence to do so.
Yeah. I mean, for that, you got to heal. You got to heal the wounds. And one thing I learned, I did get into my relationship very quickly after my divorce. It's worked out, and it's been incredible, but I definitely recommend some time to heal. Now I've lost the other question.
Oh, shit, sorry.
your fault again. It was more that like three things. Three
tips. Yes. 3 tips. First of all, the most important thing I think is to find your purpose.
How? What do you do? How do you try and find it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's resources out. I know I think I did a whole podcast, not to promote my podcast on your podcast, but I did a whole podcast episode. Actually, I think it's still my number one viewed episode is about finding your purpose. The podcast was called, ironically, Men Becoming Better Men. Finding podcasts, reading books, getting into personal growth. Personal development. One of the things actually I haven't mentioned yet that I found when I first started working with my coach, I think I was about 45 or so when I started working with her, somewhere around that, 45, 47, when I started working with a coach. So at age 47, when I learned that, I graduated from college when I was, 21 or 22? Can't remember exactly, but I had gone that whole span of time basically not learning a dang thing. I thought, I have a college degree. I know everything I need to know. I'm just going to keep doing my job. And if I need to learn something for my job, I'll get out of my comfort zone a little bit and I'll learn. But I wasn't learning anything else. I now have a whole bookshelf of books about, whether it's business marketing or coaching or mindset or whatever. I got a whole shelf of books over here that I would have never thought in that 20 some odd year gap that I needed to know. And now that I know those things, every book I read now, I feel like I get more and more, become more and more of the person I was supposed to be. So tip number 1 would be reading. Tip number 2, I can't remember the other one I gave you already now. For your purpose, find your purpose. Read more, educate yourself. Whether it's personal development, mindset, whatever. And the third tip, relationship-wise, again, learn those love languages. Learn what your partner is, what your partner needs, and then learn what you need. And then figure out a way communicating between each other how to bridge any gaps or, things that you're doing that she needs or she's doing that you need or vice versa. So working on those couple things that get you started. And then I'll follow that up with it's scary to invest in yourself and to put hard-earned money into something that isn't really tangible, right? But what I found when I invested in that first program, I spent several $1,000s on my first coaching program, and it wasn't money I just come out of a divorce. I didn't really have a bunch of money. It was all on my credit card, and honestly, I paid some pretty high interest on that amount of money for the time between the time I started and the time I paid it off. But honest to God, guys, I'd pay double that right now if I knew what those outcomes, or I had even an idea of what those outcomes were going to be from that first day until today. And that's the thing. I know a lot of people, money is a scary thing, right? A lot of people have mindset issues around money and resources. but investing in it's investing in yourself. I mean, what's the phrase? An asset is something that appreciates, and a liability is something that basically never comes back. Coaching is not a liability. It's not something where you put money out and you're never going to get anything back. Because if you get nothing back from coaching, that means you're basically, you can't even form a sentence. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. Basically means you're an idiot if you can't successfully coaching, because coaching is all about motivate. I mean, obviously there's good coaches and bad coaches, right? But as a coach, what I'm going to do is I'm going to challenge you to raise your game, right? I'm going to, level you up in your life. And if you're not able to level yourself, it's your own fault. And chances are, when you put some money on the line, like right now, I'm paying an obscene amount of money for my coach right now. It's obscene, but I show up every day. And I know that if he says, you should really look at doing this, I'm going to really look at doing this, and I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to put effort into it. I'm going to put energy into it, and I'm going to get it done because I know it's going to help me, because I've been there. I've done it enough times with enough different coaches that where I know when I'm going to follow their recommendations, that it's going to pay off for me because they've been there. They've seen it. They've done that work. And that's the beauty part of it. And a lot of people are scared to death to invest in themselves. But at the end of the day, you're not going to go farther. You're not going to get ahead. You're going to stay exactly where you're at if you're not willing to put that money in and do that work.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. But when there's money invested, you're more likely to show up and give it more of your all. But we're coming towards the end now, unfortunately. But can you tell everybody where they can reach your pages, your Instagram, your Facebook, and stuff, just so people, so if the listeners are listening and they're like, you know what, Bob sounds like my guy, I need to fucking hit him up.
Yeah, the easiest thing to do, if you want to reach out to me, you can schedule an appointment with me on my website. It's called menbecomingbettermen.com. You can also catch me on TikTok and Instagram. Both of them are The Relationship Engineer, all one word, at The Relationship Engineer. On those, and if you want to join my private Facebook group, you gotta search the Facebook group. It's called Men Becoming Better Men. Search it on Facebook. You have to apply to get in. I just check you out, make sure you're a man, more or less, and I'll let you in the group.
I have to pull down your trousers on the camera.
Hey, Bob.
And then just a couple of side notes. My program that I've put together is called MVP, Most Victories Possible.
Nice.
It can be a 6 or 12 month program. I've started putting that out there and getting it rolling now. It's going to be an insanely successful program. I know it. And actually, I'm writing the book. Actually, I'm waiting for. Actually, as soon as I hang up with you guys, I got to go check the edits for my I've outsourced creating an ebook. It's all written. It's just being formatted right now. It should be out. I should be punching it out on social media here very shortly. Putting it in. And you mentioned my link tree that you can get off my Instagram. But it'll be out there very shortly. It's called the 5 Blatant Lies That Men Believe. Super cool book, and I think it's going to hit a lot of guys right in the kisser as far as those lies that we believe as men. That we fall for on a daily basis, and we shouldn't be falling for because they're just keeping us stuck or keeping us in our own way. So I'm excited to get that out.
Yeah, well, we'll be sharing it all over our page, so it sounds amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. But no, Bob, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time and rearranging your things so you could come on with us today. It's really, really appreciated. You've been amazing.
No problem, guys.
And thanks very much for your time. And we wish you all the best in absolutely everything, mate.
Thanks, guys. You too, and good luck with the show. I'm looking forward to going back and checking out some of the other episodes. There was one on some breathing techniques in there too. I've been doing a little bit of breath work lately, and I'm always looking for new information and ideas on how to do the breath work. So
we've got loads of fun and interesting people on there. You can learn a lot from.
Cool.
No, magic, Bob. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day, pal.
All right, man. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Cheers, Bob.